spirits. Welcome back to Flying Upstream. I'm your host, Kristen Medeiros. Today's guest is someone who lives at the intersection of discipline, faith, and legacy. He is a Marine officer, an award winning children's book author, a father, and a mentor who is deeply focused on shaping the next generation from the inside out. Ulalu Ogunyemi grew up in a big family in Louisiana, five of six kids. That's a lot. Smart, curious, mischievous, a kid who could have easily gone down a very different path if one moment of grace had not intervened. That moment came when an assistant principal decided to give him one more chance. That single decision altered the direction of his life. Today, Ulalu uses that story and many others to help parents, leaders, and young people break harmful identity cycles and build something that outlives them. He's the founder of Parent Child Connect, the author of Crow from the Shadow, and the voice behind a mission rooted in service over spotlight. Olalu, welcome to Flying Upstream.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Kristen. I'm excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this conversation, so I'm ready to dive in.
Amazing. Okay, let's get to it. So, I want to go back into the early days for you. You grew up one of six kids in Louisiana. What was that household like, and where do you see those early dynamics still showing up in your life today?
Yeah, for one, it was busy. I'll start there. With six kids in the home, yeah, I had two older sisters. So my older sisters are 12 and 14 years older than me. But then it's the four boys, and that's what made it so busy. We three of us are 2 years apart. Then comes my little brother, who's about 5 years behind me, and it was just like constantly having things going on. And honestly, there's this competition that we had, especially amongst the boys, to where everybody wanted to be the best. And I think that really played out as I continued to grow older, and I truly wanted to become a competitor myself and become better myself every single day. I learned from those days what it means to have healthy competition, and I learned from those days what it means to have unhealthy competition. And really, it's been keeping in contact with my siblings that helped me to learn that. I think if we would have gone throughout life and then lost contact, then perhaps I wouldn't have known what was healthy versus unhealthy. But since we maintain contact and become adults ourselves and have our own experiences, now we see some things. It's like, man, you know what? That probably wasn't the right thing to say to you. I see your intent was to toughen me up like my older brothers. But many times it wasn't necessarily toughen me up. It was just making me a little bit more bitter. But I think that's really some of the things that came from the house. We truly do believe in being there for each other. And my parents made sure that we were always looking out for each other. And those are the kind of things that not only I try to reiterate in my own home, but I try to reiterate it in my day to day with Marines. And anytime I'm interacting with leaders or parents, I just try to remind them that, hey, we have to be there for somebody else. And if we're able to build an environment where people feel safe and they can rely on each other to grow.
That's so beautiful. I love that you kind of took your some learnings from your early childhood into your life today. And you were a smart kid. You were salutatorian, athletic, involved in church, and still you describe yourself as mischievous and searching. What do you think you were actually looking for back then?
Yeah, so I grew up, as you already alluded to, I was in Louisiana, and I had the name Olaolu Ogunyemi in Louisiana, right? So I didn't necessarily fit in right off the bat with my name. And there's just so many other things that I felt like I was a little bit of an outcast. And that was the hard part because I was dealing with this dynamic, and I'm sure my parents, as they look back on it now, they don't understand how it even happened. But in one way, I felt like I knew I had a loving home, but I felt like my two older sisters were sort of together. My two older brothers sort of were together. Then there's me, the runt, and then my little brother, who was the protected class of the baby. At least that's how I, for some reason, viewed it that way. And so, and for whatever reason, I felt like I needed to be more accepted when I left the house. And quite honestly, the only group that really was accepting of me was some of the guys that, quite honestly, are in the system now. And to be a part of that group, it took you acting out. It took you doing some mischievous things. So if you wanted to fit in or you want to feel cool, then they have to dare you to do something and you never back down from a challenge. And so as young boys, especially as you continue to do that, hey, I challenge you, I dare you to do this, I dare you to do that. The challenges get more and more dangerous over time and more mischievous over time. And I think that's how I found myself in those predicaments. And so that's really what happened. salutatorian because my parents, my father especially, really emphasized education. And again, we were competitive, so there was no way I was going to let them all be super smart and I'd be the one that fails out of school. But then again, trying to fit in outside the house just had me in some weird predicaments.
I can understand that. I can understand you would maybe be feel pulled between two worlds, two different dynamics in your life. And with that in mind, I want to go back to that moment that you spoke about where your assistant principal gave you a second chance and how significant that was in that moment. And when you look back now, how do you understand that moment differently than you did then?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal question. And I love talking about it because, at one point it seemed like she was targeting my family, my brothers, because we used to wear uniforms. And it was anytime we had a shirt on that was not the like school gold, it was slightly lighter because probably on sale at Walmart or wherever we were getting our uniform, she would come out and go fuss at my brothers and call the parents. And it was always a thing with her. But when I actually got in trouble, this wasn't a uniform violation. This is me, you know, actually assaulting another young man who I thought was going to fight me back, but instead he ran out of the bathroom straight to the office, and I was like, okay, this is it. This is the last straw. And I remember thinking, like, man, I can't believe he did that. I can't. I thought he was at least going to swing back so I can at least go, claim the self defense or say something. I mean, it would be an equal fight. Suspended for 3 days and we come back. But it's a different thing when they already said, hey, I don't want to fight, and then you swing at him anyway. And that's really what happened. And so now I find myself in the office in front of this assistant principal, and I could just see the look of disappointment. Now I can still today it gives me chills when I think about the look wasn't anger, it wasn't frustration, it wasn't annoyance, it was true disappointment because she says, I know you're better than this, and why are you doing this? You're better than this, and you know what? I can send you home. I can legitimately kick you out of school, and you'll be at the alternative school for this one action, not counting all the other things that you've done this year. She said, but you know what? I'm going to take that referral. And she took the referral that she had and put it in her desk drawer. And she said, you got one more chance. And there was something about that moment to me, being on the cusp. Because, you can play around, you can push the boundaries a little bit. But the second you do something that can actually have you in the alternative school or getting expelled, all those kind of things, now it's like, whoa, this is a real deal. This is a life altering event. I'm no longer going to be with my friends and all the people I've been with. I'm no longer going to be just the child who's just sort of acting out every once in a while that my parents are knocking back in line. No, I am the child now who's gotten kicked out of school. And I think being on the cusp of that, on the brink of that, truly helped me to understand that, man, you got it. You got to cut this out. And that was middle school. And I just remember, like I said, like you were asking, when I look back at that moment and I think about her in particular, just giving me that chance and taking that referral and putting it on her desk, it really made the difference. It truly made a difference in my life. Who knows what would happen if I went over to alternative school? Maybe somebody else would have given me a chance, or maybe not. I don't know. But what I do know is by her taking that opportunity in a situation where, quite honestly, she shouldn't have, and potentially, didn't have the grounds to do it. She had many more grounds or more risk in sending me back into that environment than not taking me, pulling me out. But she chose to for whatever reason, and I have her to thank for it. And I love the full circle moment is she brought me back to the school to talk to this children just a couple of years ago before she retired. And I got to read to them. I got to interact with them in virtual sessions. So by the time I got to the school, it was just it was an amazing moment. It was like really heartwarming. And then she retired, and I was like, man, it was a full circle moment to see that happen.
That's incredible. And how special that you could go back to the same place with the same assistant principal or principal that it all started with, and not only share your appreciation with her, but with the entire school and share your story. That's so special.
Yeah, it
I
really
appreciate
is.
that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you get the second chance. Now you're taking life a little more seriously. And after college, you went on to join the Marine Corps, even though you were kind of on a traditional path that others had mapped out for you. What do you think the Marines gave you that corporate life never could?
Oh, well, that list is pretty long. And I actually did work in corporate for a little while, and I absolutely loved the environment. I loved the friends that I had there and the mentors. They took great care of me. But when I joined the Marine Corps, it was number one is the getting an opportunity to meet so many different people from so many different walks of life. Growing up in Louisiana, I had gone as far west as Texas. Maybe, I mean, probably like Dallas is probably as far west as I went. And I think I went South Texas at one point. And I went basically as far east as Mississippi, except to go visit my sister who was in Atlanta and to visit my grandma who was in Illinois. So I really didn't get out of Louisiana much. And so you grow up in that environment and you just sort of you form your own opinions and your perspectives and things of that nature. But then you join the Marine Corps, and it's a true melting pot. You know, you get out, and you're now in charge. When I first got to my first unit, I was in charge of 80 people, and when I say 80 people, I mean it was a wild diversity of people, all kinds of backgrounds, all kinds of situations, and it's just been amazing in that regard. And I think that's one of the first things that stood out to me, is that it truly is a melting pot of people who come together under one roof with one mission, and it's like, and I think that's really what bonds us. So we go through a lot of hardships together, but I think that truly makes lifelong friends, and that's some of the things that the Marine Corps provides, is that fraternal bond that's hard to replicate in corporate, because you just don't have those same hard situations. And not to say that corporate doesn't have hard times, and I know it does. Like I said, I work very temporarily there, but I'm certain there are hard times in corporate. But it's just those being those austere environments that the Marine Corps has placed us in. Those are the moments that I truly have become appreciative of. Not that I enjoy getting frostbite or things of that nature, but the fact that I did it with people to my left and right, and we have memories. And I'm actually coming up on an anniversary of my frostbite. What was that, like 12 years
Oh.
ago at this, or 13 years ago? And so it's just funny to think about those kind of things, and know that I'm gonna call my buddy and say, "Hey, man, you remember we're in the hospital together?" And we laugh about it. It's just those moments that we're able to share, and I think that truly does make a little bit of a difference between what I learned in the Marine Corps, and my short time in corporate.
Yeah, and I appreciate that because you're right, corporate is very different. It is stressful and difficult, but in a totally different way. I think I can speak for most people in corporate when I say there's not really a time where your life is in danger. You know, no one is going to literally shoot a gun at you or deploy you where you have to jump out of an airplane or anything like that. Like it's not the same for sure. So I appreciate that you went on that path and learned so much from it, and then went on to create the Parent Child Connect series, which was born from your own uncertainty as a young parent. What did you realize was missing in the way that we talk to kids and the way that we guide them?
Well, for one, I thought I knew everything, and when I was a young parent, as you alluded to. So I had my first child. My first child was born when I was 19, and I was still in college. And then I graduated from college at 22. Now I have a 3-year-old, and I'm married. And I can tell you with confidence that though I was trying to protrude this confident figure, like this father who knows everything, and he's doing all, and I've read all these books and articles, I legitimately did not know what I was doing, and it was, I was like trying my best, especially as a young father, to hit those home run moments with my daughter. That I started realizing that I was missing out on the simpler things, those moments where I literally just sit down and read and laugh and enjoy. And I was like, really, what I'm looking for is to be present and be engaged. But now I'm starting to miss those things because I'm waiting for that big opportunity to take her on a date night where I drive the car around the block and I come up with my flowers and things. And so when those things weren't happening, I'm like, man, you know what? I'm not doing enough. And because I'm now being distracted by not doing enough, in quotes, I decided, I was like, man, I need to come up with a better method to have consistent touch points, to be able to connect with my children more consistently, and just make sure they're able to do those things. And that's what Parent Child Connect came from. It started off as a book series, really. It was what I was going to enjoy a couple of books with my kids. But then I realized there's other parents out there who need resources just to connect their children and have moments, those simple moments that become teachable and memorable experiences. I was talking to somebody else on the same point. Is one of the things that I realized is that nobody out there that I've talked to has said, man, I wish my dad would have worked longer so he can buy me more things, or so he could have done these big things. But there's a lot of people out there, a lot of children out there that will say, man, I wish my father was there, to watch me take my first steps, or to watch me swing at the baseball game, or watch me make my first points in a basketball game. And so what I started to realize is these are just simple moments. It's not the fact that you made your first basket. You just want that person present in your life to see and witness and enjoy these moments, these simple moments with you. So that's really what parents.
Oh, looks like we are having a technical moment. Olalu, are you there? Okay, we'll wait for him to come back online. And while we're giving him a chance to reconnect, I just want to kind of touch on what he just mentioned, which is this opportunity that we have today as parents to connect with our children. And not only parents, but really this can be expanded to everybody. Part of that comes from being present and in the moment. And what does that even mean? Everybody says be present, be mindful. What does that even mean? Part of it means putting your phone away. I got some advice from somebody I thought was brilliant. When you're spending time with your children, put your phone behind two closed doors. So not just one, not just in the other room, but another closed door even behind that. So whether it needs to be in the bathroom, downstairs or upstairs, depending on where you are, but really putting it away and giving yourself that opportunity to not even be tempted to really dial in with what your child is saying and what they're doing. I got another awesome piece of advice that I loved, which is that when you're with your kid and you're trying to connect with them, I always was raised to ask questions. To it shows you're interested, you want to hear what they have to say. But actually that's not the way that children really connect, because asking questions in a way is actually a form of judgment. I know we don't think of it that way, a judgment or kind of like an assessment, right? So having the ability to just stay quiet or just repeat back what you're hearing. If they're saying, I'm building a castle out of blocks and my green teddy bear is going to live there, you can just say, oh, your green teddy bear is going to live there. And that's it. And these are things that I've tried personally that I've found super successful and really helpful. So I really appreciate what Ulalu has been saying in terms of the importance of connecting. And it has nothing to do with how much money you're making or what your social status is. It's all about taking that moment to find a few moments in the day or longer to connect with your child. So, all right, we hear you back now. And I think you were just kind of talking about the importance of connecting with your child and spending time together to be present and mindful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I heard what you're saying. That's spot on. And I apologize. I think we have some weather blowing in here. But one of the things that you just said is that it's not about how much money you spend or how much you're going to do. And one of my favorite analogies to talk about when discussing this topic is, as a young guy, I played t-ball, and I'll never forget when I first went out there to swing. I was swinging for the fences. My goal was to hit a home run straight off the tee first time. And you wouldn't believe that I struck out in t-ball. And I tell people this story. It's sort of embarrassing because it's t-ball. Hand-eye coordination. You just hit the ball off the tee and you run. But I was swinging so hard trying to hit it to the fence or hit it over the fence that I struck out. And I think that's sometimes what we do as parents is that we tend to try to take these big swings and we start swinging and miss. We swing and miss. Why? Because we're taking wild swings when all we have to do is make contact. And that's what I always tell people. It's all about making contact with your children, getting into their world, figuring out what they're interested in. Sometimes it may not be what you're interested in many cases, especially now with all these influences that children have. I have moments with my oldest daughter we call tea time, and I never once sat down with my brothers and talked about the tea going on. But that's just something that we do with my oldest daughter. My son, I wouldn't even try tea time with him because I would get absolutely nothing out of it. We couldn't, there's no way I would actually understand, but I can talk to him about sports and we talk about Roblox. That's what he's interested in. Same with my 7-year-old. So it's just understanding what's in their world and what they enjoy doing and getting into the world and really connecting with them.
I especially like that you're speaking about checking in with each child individually and finding what works for them. Because a lot of advice out there is one size fits all. And that's not how people are. That's definitely not how kids are. So I appreciate that. One other thing that you talk about is the harmful cycle of trying to find identity. And I'm curious to know, what does that cycle look like when it goes unchecked and what helps to interrupt it?
Yeah, so I'll answer the second question because that's probably the easier question. What helps to interrupt it is accountability. Having somebody who's able to turn the mirror around to you and show you what's going on. One of my favorite examples is I had a mohawk. I know I have a shortcut now. I'm in the Marine Corps, but I had a mohawk at one point in high school, and it was part of my rebellious phase. I turned 17. Really, it started when I was 16 when I really got rebellious, and more so it's like, well, I'm a man now. I can do everything for myself. And I knew my assistant principal didn't like it. We call it, his name was Coach Johnson. And my dad certainly didn't like it. But it was my thing. I was like, okay, nobody can stop me from growing my hair. This is not out of regs, although it was out of the uniform regulation. But I still was doing it, you know. And one of the things that I realized is my dad consistently talking to me. At first, it seemed like he was trying to set boundaries and, you know, you don't need to have this hair. You know, his hair is not good. And for me, I was like, well, why? You know, of course, I didn't ask him that, but that's what I felt. It's like, what do you mean it's not good? But the one conversation that he never remembers, but he did have with me, is that he sat down with me and said, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I went down the list of all these things. I want to be a CEO of a company. I want to do all these things. I want to be a Marine. And he's like, "Oh, that's awesome. You know, well, of the people who you aspire to be, like, how many of them have a hair just like yours?" And the second he did that, he really opened my eyes to see, oh man, this is, you know, that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to be like somebody. I've already marked people in my mind that I want to be like, yet I don't look like them. I'm not practicing like that. And for me, that worked. And that's how he was able to help me find myself. But to answer the other question is,
Beautiful.
how does it become dangerous? It really, it becomes dangerous when you're just sort of out, you know, doing everything to find, you're willing to do anything to find yourself. And I think that's where it gets very dangerous, is that we're willing to do any and everything to find ourselves and to become, you know, to try to build our identity. And I think that's where we start to fall or fail in our walk and trying to find our identity.
I love that. And as we're wrapping up here, I've got one last question for you. And I like to end on something kind of reflective or inspirational. If you had to sit across from your younger self in that moment before the second chance was given, what truth would you tell that person about who he already was beneath the insecurity?
Absolutely. Simple answer. I will tell him, man, you're already good enough. Stop trying to prove yourself to people. You are already good enough. You're already smart enough. You're handsome enough. That was hard for me to accept. You're just accept yourself, man. You look great, and you're an awesome guy the way you are.
So lovely. Well, Lalu, thank you so much for being here and for bringing so much depth to this conversation. Your story is a powerful reminder that identity is not something we stumble into by accident. It's shaped by the moments we are given grace, the discipline we choose, and the way we decide to serve others. And you shared what it looks like to grow through insecurity instead of letting it harden into armor. I appreciate you spoke honestly about second chances, fatherhood before you even felt ready, and leadership, how it starts at home before it even shows up in life. But most of all, thank you for reminding us that legacy is not about recognition, it's about impact. It's about choosing to be the steady voice when the world is loud and confusing, especially for the next generation. Thank you so much for your time, your openness, and the work you're doing to help other parents, kids, and leaders reconnect with who they are and who they are meant to be. Thank you so much for flying upstream with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Kristen. It's been a pleasure.